So ready to start Habit of Victory. The general issue of trying to decipher and start a Zucker game is always very, very painful. There's two things here. Well, a few things here. Rules-wise, I'm used to the core from Napoleon at Bay and some of the older games, but now there's a lot of new things here with the cards and how they're handled, and then some little tiny twists that it's hard to absorb, and I always find his rules very, very difficult to cope with. I'm not sure why. Napoleon at Bay was easy. I have to tell you this. It's an easier game, but it also presented the rules. But you know, the lighter the game, the easier it is to present the rules well. I didn't find the little guy, the Napoleon in Italy or whatever, particularly easy. But that may be the actual format of the paper that the rules are printed on and the choice of how much space. That Avalon Hill format always pissed me off. But it was real cheap, so, you know, less so nowadays, but shipping is cheap. The other thing, though, is setup. Setup is always such a bitch in his games, and I don't know if there's some easier way to present it, but I had all those extra pieces. Well, I've gotten myself to a point where I think I've resolved most of them. There's a vedette for Borgson here. Well, his infantry is over here, so I'm going to attach that to Barclay and say, yeah, that's one I can fling out of Barclay at any point. Now, the way the rules are written, there are no vedettes on the board. You just kind of poop them out, and you can start set up with a couple pooped out. But they're very specifically set on the board in the scenario instructions, which is different from, well, most of them. Ones like this, not so much, and I'll have to figure out. I found the rule at the beginning of the scenario instructions, you know, for general rules for all scenarios. The pontoon bridges are assigned to any 3 leaders of your choice. So I've done that. That led me to look at the terrain a little bit, which is kind of interesting, because the French are here behind, I don't know what river this is. You know, I should just instantly know if I'm playing this what river I'm looking at, right? But I don't, and unfortunately I don't see anything on there. Is this the Vistula, or... You know, I'm just totally guessing. My geography's not that great. And this isn't the campaign that I studied, so... Okay. So, I've got this random river I'm trying to pass across, and all the bridges are gone. The French are over on this side, but there's a few here under Davout and Murat that are kind of trapped on the wrong side of the bridge. So I gave Davout, since he doesn't... And he has infantry with him. I don't know if Murat does. No. I gave Davout enough force to... or I gave him a pontoon bridge in case he needs to cross. I also gave one to Augereau here to help him, because it might be hard to be crossing if I'm under pressure over here. However, I'm on the strategic offensive, but I need to hook up a supply source, and that's kind of the problem here. Of course, I can just repair this burned bridge. That will probably be easier. And then I also gave one over to Ney, because he's over in this section, and I may I may need a bridge in that part of the map. For the Russians and Prussians, I assigned Lestock one. Now, Lestock is interesting. He's one of the confusing counters. There's a few who have multiple leader counters for the same person with different numbers. There's a better Lestock counter. Maybe that's an option. I seem to actually remember that as such. Or maybe it's baked into a card where, hey, Lestock, you know, becomes God, or whatever. So I'm willing to live with that. I've got a pile of Austrians. I don't know what I did with, oh, there's Chucky. Let's take Chucky off the map and put him with his Austrians. He will come in through the Austrian intervention, I guess. Prince Golitsyn, I have no idea where he comes from. We'll take him off the map. I've done the same with Poniatowski. Oh, wait. Alright, let me... So here's the thing. Golitsyn's a major general, I think. I mean, he kind of looks like one in terms of having a little thing. So we'll just, I don't know. We'll just move him over here again. I have no fucking clue. Poniatowski, I think, like Charles, is going to come in through the events. I hope. Otherwise, Victor, I've got him here. He's one of the replacement leaders, and the only one that I have who isn't on the board, so I'm going to figure he can take over some other corps. He's just kicking around. And I assume I can do the same with Savray, although he is assigned to the, you know, to be able to move things, whatever. Yeah, it's not all very clear. The other units that I had kicking around, all these French units, many of them were the core units, and then the others look to be child units of core units that are already on the display. So that's how I'm going to handle that, I guess. And I think we're ready to rock. Maybe sometime today I'll actually play some of this, but not now. Okay, so still not started, but at least I dealt out the cards, and that reveals one of the things that I definitely don't feel comfortable with at this point. In CDGs, and in this too, one of the problems is you're handed this pile of cards. Usually it's only about 5, and you have a bunch of different events, and you have to figure out how to time them all and everything. And in a really simple game, in a system where you're trying to optimize, you know, the board state and your victory points and all that, it's not too bad. But the more complex the game gets, the more tedious it is. Here, you've got ones that are probably less of a big deal. Like I'm looking at this. Chief of Staff takes command. Can't be played as op-ed. Some dude gets his initiative increased during the next march and forced march. Well, that's barely of any importance. But there's a lot of other information on these cards you have to assess, and I haven't really tried to do that too well. So like, oh, there's the amount of points that I have for movement. There's whether or not I'm going to be allowed to do pitched battles. And then there's the attrition chart. So I'm sitting on 10 cards with the French, 12 over here with the coalition, and I have to optimize over this humongous space. And I absolutely have to. I can't play without trying to do that. Not doing so would be like looking at a CRT and saying, well, what the hell, you know, I'll just throw some pieces in and see what happens. Which is fine if you're talking about an operational combat series where you're not allowed to see the pieces. And if you end up, you know, at the bottom of an odds chart, you know, at the end of an odds chart, just missing by 1 or something, you know, that's part of the game. But this isn't part of the game to not make this optimization. It's not part of it to just throw a card in. It's more along the lines of, you know, a friend of mine I had playing, I don't remember, maybe it was Third Reich or something like it, who just was like, well, you know, I don't feel like counting the odds. I'll just throw some pieces in. They look like enough. And it just turned out that every single one of his attacks was 1-to-1 when he should have had a couple of 2-to-1 attacks instead. And it just, you know, you might as well not play if you don't take into account what the game's designed about. And part of this game is designed around these cards. And you add to that the fact that we've already stripped away the clean lines of the Napoleon at Bay game and gone to that 1980s era of Zucker designs that starts adding so much stuff. I just don't know. I have a little bit of a cold, and I just do not want to face this, but all right, we'll get to it. It may take me a week to actually move a piece to the map. Looking for the terrain objectives that I want. Well, some of them are pretty easy. Königsberg, Warsaw, Danzig. Okay, it's getting harder. Thorn took me a while. My knowledge. And yeah, they're kind of in a bold face, but it's hard to see in the muted tones of the map. I'm not stating out in favor of, some of the more modern games, and the bubble games are the worst of this, really kind of blare out their information. Maybe they blare out all of it. But there's a compromise position, and one where the map doesn't just sit as a piece of art, which this does, but it generates some functional value as well that helps you find what you need. Okay, but there's 5 capital cities here. Königsberg, Warsaw, Pultusk, which I've never heard of, Thorn, and Danzig. So I have no idea where Pultusk is. Well, I'm searching everywhere, again and again. It took me about 5 minutes, looking for something that's not blurred. Yeah, this is just my broken zoom. Looking for the bold face. Turns out it's not. This is Pultusk, or Polutsk, or whatever. Sitting, yeah, it's in a kind of important place, but there's just nothing to help me see that. And these are supposedly called capital cities, so I would expect that they would have the same representation on the map. No. And now I have to also worry about the places that affect Prussian reinforcements. Now, at least they give me the hex numbers on these. That's helpful. I can find it. So now 1612, where is this sitting? And, what might convince me that it's of some importance, that I would pay more attention. It is a depot, at least, although that itself, again, is barely visible when you step away from the map at all. Again, I'm not saying put little boundaries around the hexes that blare out in bright colors or anything. Just a little bit more than I'm seeing here for the things that are important in representation. So much of the map is taken up by these little specks, and there we go again. It looks pretty, but whatever. All right, so at least I know where my geographical objectives are. The other objectives are combat ones. They're not quite as simple, again, as Napoleon at Bay's. We have the battles. What else? If there's 14 or more Russians within 5 of Allenstein or Pultusk, but not both. If it's both, I don't know what goes on here. This is a rule that makes no sense to me. So each monthly interphase, if the coalition has 14 or more strength phases within 5 hexes of either of these, but not both. Okay? Paris morale goes down by a step. This effect is cumulative. I guess the cumulative means each interphase I have to check it. So I have 2 places of interest here, Allenstein 2424, and I got to remember not to be near both of them. and that's probably got something to do with too much of a threat to Prussia. And Pultusk, or whatever it is, which we know where it is. It's somewhere down there. Yeah, it's down here. And that's what, 5 movement points? Yeah, 5 hexes. Okay, so those become pretty damn important. So, immediate goal is here, and then the next one is somewhere else. Is it Allen Camp? I know that's mentioned. Allen Stein, 2424. Oh, this, I thought this read as Allen Camp. See, I mean, I can't read the map, you know? It's just too muted in too many ways. And, you know, sure, eventually maybe you realize that this is important, but this is one of the things that got me with 6 days, too. It wasn't obvious to me how to interpret the map at any given time. The clear lines weren't written there, etc. Oh, shit. And now I gotta find my sequence of play, and that's the next thing I start to study and try to figure out what I can get there. And I'll go do something else because I don't want to face it, you know. Hey, let's take care of the automatic stuff. First thing in the sequence of play is the weather determination. A lot of words here. Okay, you know, I'm used to the sequence of play on a cheat sheet or something being a little bit mellower, but okay, that's fine. It'll vary from game turn to game turn in the series. Great. The weather is determined by a die roll, and that'll be off the weather table here, I guess. The modifier is on the turn record track. Okay, so what's interesting here is they actually have fixed weather set for every turn and a die roll modifier. But on the first turn of the game, you're supposed to ignore the die roll modifier, but why is it there? I don't know. I guess in case you want to roll a die every time, just like they get the fixed weathers even though it's not supported by the rules. In case you want to do that. Alright, so now we're in the campaign and the command phase. Now I believe the French go first in every scenario. Draw a card. You always draw at least one card. You count the number of cards you then hold. Okay, well, this is going to be similar to our normal. I believe this is the administrative pool table. This just sounds like you draw one card, but I don't think that's what it is. And we're the French, December through January. How far is our line of communication? Well, where's our little wagon? It's right here. 11 primary road hexes. Ooh, this is in movement points, not primary roads like in the previous game. That is a primary road, I hope. It looks like it's... yeah. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. So are they a half? Yeah. So that's 5.5. Now we find the chart. That puts me over here. And I get to roll some dice. And unfortunately, I don't have... here's a couple kicking around. I'll switch to prettier dice because I think this game demands prettier dice. These are, you know, Avalon Hill dice. They're what I use with old Avalon Hill games that have graphics appropriate to the era and SPI games and stuff like that for whatever reason. I don't use the little tiny SPI dice for much. I like them, but... Alright, so I get 3 more cards. And these are French cards. And now my pile has increased of things to look at. Alright. I set operational tempo. This is my op-int card, and this requires that I fully analyze 13 cards, make my plans for the turn, la la la. Totally heavier burden on the player than Napoleon at Bay, which puts this, yeah, you know, you figure out what you're going to do, and then you start spending points. And it's just not a big deal. Here I have to look at all these damn cards. And that's definitely a huge, huge expense in terms of effort and decision making and all that crap. So this is even more annoying than I pictured it on this one issue, as I'm looking through my cards and saying, you know, I can't make any damn decision here. But to set operational tempo, which I'm trying to do here with the op-in card, comes amidst a whole bunch of other stuff. Now this may be important because you need a specific card to do some of this stuff, but all this sort of admin stuff that you do before you start spending points, well, you have to spend your first command before you do any of that. And that command doesn't actually take effect until down here, after reinforcements are placed on the map. It's just, you can figure it all out, like where your reinforcements are coming previous to that, but it's an obnoxious little step in the location that it's in. I understand it probably has to be done. There's probably, you know, I'm looking at some of these, but, you know, like area defense allows me to move my center of ops, which I think is something, I can disband it there. I don't think I need a card for that. But again, I'm not sure, you know, because in some cases I can only tell things based on a card. So for example, this one says recipient oppant any force creates an improved position. Okay, well, that's pretty clearly going to only be one force. But if I hadn't seen that, new wagons here, draw one card as new wagons roll in. Oppant any force that does not enter an enemy zone of control, the recipient, does not suffer attrition this turn. Okay, well, any force could mean two different things, you know, in that case. In fact, in the other one too. Except this seems to apply to any force during movement, is the way I would read that, if I hadn't seen the same notation on a different card. And again, that kind of thing's not going to be spelled out in the rules, and God, I wouldn't want it to be. They're long enough and replace all the other original rules that for some reason are included in the package anyway. But yeah, and again, time to go take a break because facing the decision making in this is just too much. One thing is the movement rates that you have on your card correspond to the attrition. So if you play a high movement rate card, you're going to pay more attrition even if you don't use that movement. Alternatively, if you play a low movement rate card, you don't have the option to move as hard as you would otherwise. I think that works nicely on the individual orders and perhaps on the initiative orders. I'm a little worried because I'm looking over here at Davout and Murat and this, and all these counters should be face down. So, you know, and I won't know what my enemy has, but I also won't know what I have, you know, and even in an opposed game, I wouldn't be able to cope with that very well. Eventually, you get used to what your forces are, but the first couple turns, I would probably want to be face up anyway. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know what whoever this is Sedemarsky. So, you know, if I knew the setup of the game and had that memorized, I would be able to understand that. I'm going to cheat instead and look up, okay, he's only got 3 strength points. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it's more in this game than otherwise. So I got to look and see, hey, how much does Davout have? Well, he has a fair amount, and Murat probably, Murat only has 2. So, you know, I've got a fair amount of strength there, 6, 8, 10 to 3. So I probably can do a pretty good battle. But these guys are going to be reliant on initiative. And as such, I probably want an oppant that can get them into play across this minor river. It would be nice if I wasn't going to be hitting affecting terrain, although I think that little townie is. Unfortunately, over here, as another step in this, they don't indicate what's affecting and what's not. So now I have to look that up. Now, that was easy to remember eventually. There aren't that many choices, but I'm not quite sure where to find it. Of course, there's an index, 38 and 40. Okay, and I guess that's paragraph from how high the numbers go eventually. Okay, towns are affecting, so the stream doesn't really matter, I think. Well, now we look at the combat terrain effects chart, and a town allows the affecting, and the force and the hex can always choose pitched battle, which I guess means, you know, I don't have the limitation that I normally do on rounds of pitched battle. And then the secondary river affecting ×2 support pursuit loss if retreating through it. Well, through it doesn't happen if I'm attacking across it for some reason. I guess it's assuming I'm getting shot crossing, so it's easy to get away. And it doesn't look like, other than the no counterattack required, that there's any tremendous bonus to this. The no counterattack's a big deal, because if I outnumber my opponent, you know, and he has to counterattack, he's going to be attacking at terrible odds, so he'll probably take a pursuit battle if he possibly can, which he almost always can. Oh wait, I think, no, this isn't the fort, it's the numbers. You know, the map is so difficult to read that that's hard to tell. Now I have this redoubt, that's a ×2 value to the defense. Uh-oh, now it's getting ugly. Now I'm at like maybe 2 to 1. But I was only at 3 to 1. I guess I was at 4 to 1. So that's an issue. I have the weather, which, what did we determine it is? It's frost. That's probably okay. Yeah, that's the same as like happy weather. Same thing as in Napoleonic Bay. So now, what am I doing? Oh yeah, I'm trying to decide which card to use. Now, I wanted one of these 4, but each of these doesn't do what it's supposed to do on its op-in. And I'm also trying to calculate, well, would 2 to 3 movement points get me where I want to go? It's not going to get me across the stream, which might be kind of cool, given the redoubt there. Although maybe the redoubt prevents a counterattack from having to be made. I think it does. So now I have to look up that. Yeah, it's time for another break. The problem is, let me try to express it. All the cards that I can use when I'm out of supply and not take attrition are going to be low movement. They're not going to get me across this stream. So I won't get the advantage of forcing the opponent to counterattack. Okay, maybe we'll deal with that. I look at all the others. All the others have a 1 penalty if I move at all. Now, if I don't move, I'm able to live there forever. So, whatever. I'm not really thrilled with that. But the cards that I might use here, spoiling attack. Okay, this turns something into a pursuit battle. Useful, especially if, you know, I'm making an attack here, but I can't use that this turn for that because it doesn't count if it's used as the op-int. So that's not going to help me. Defense in depth. So this gives me a march to the sound of the guns to the French forced march segment. But it only gives it to the recipient, and again, not an op-int. Yeah, maybe I can get rid of that. Maybe that's not too big a loss to get rid of. Plus, it's a pitched battle, which means I can actually fight and stand. Oh, what is the number? Okay, so this one's dangerous because I have to roll a die to succeed at it. And I need a 7 on a 6-sided die. That sounds hard. Let's see where order acceptance is explained. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right, well, there's got to be modifiers to that, but I do remember that it's this. Here we go. I get to add the leader's initiative, which means I think that's just to use the event. So the envelopment would be a really cool card, though, because I could combine two forces into one combat. I kind of like that card, and I don't think I want to play that as my op-int because it can't be used as that. Now the final one also gets boned as an op-int. If the recipient's in dispatch distance, I get another card. Well, that's cool. I sure the hell don't want to play that as my op-int because that's just too good. So that leaves me with really two cards. And I think I'm going to play this Defend in Depth. And this allows me to not look at all the other cards. Now here's a problem. Some of these work on a recipient. There's no way to mark who the recipient is. So Defend in Depth works not on the French turn, but on the following coalition turn. So I have to put this card somehow on the force that's in command. Now I could put it like this, but that doesn't look very effective. More reasonable might be to try to mark it somewhere on the op display, or otherwise, gosh, I don't know, just try to remember. I walk away from the game for, at least hours at a time, sometimes days, in the midst of, in between player turns or something. That could certainly happen. This totally screws my style of being able to play the game. If you were walking away for lunch or whatever, in a more normal opposed situation, well, that can be handled. You can put a little sticky note or something on it for who's in effect if you need to maintain some game state there. But man, that's obnoxious. And yeah, I'm just ragging on this, but I'm telling you, there's something really nice about the Napoleonic Bay simplicity that is the one reason that is the only game in this series that I've ever gotten any enjoyment out of. Any real enjoyment out of. All the others just have too many picayune little parts. And now we've added to that whole level of, systems that don't really help understand and make those big, broad, sweeping movements that the game system is so good at reflecting when it's cut down and paired to its bare bones in Napoleonic Bay with a nice big map to a smaller map which may not allow as much sweeping movement, and a less readable map which makes it harder to judge what you should be doing on those sweeping movements, and now another layer of annoying little decisions that really don't thrill me. I hope the tactical games are better because I have not experienced them, I don't think, and I bought 3 box sets of those at the same sale that I got this one. They were pretty much half price, but I think there's a narrow niche that these games appeal to, and I ain't in it. Putting off my decisions, although I vaguely have some, which is I'd like to engage over here. I need to fix the bridge, and then over here I'm not sure I can afford to engage. I'd like to, but well, what do we have? This is a garrison, this is a vedette, but I've got real force here. But not a lot of strength points, just 4 strength points. I gave a replacement point over to Ney. 1 came in this turn from the reinforcement schedule. And I've got additional forces coming in. Now these vedettes, man, they're not really they don't really have to start where they are, but that's what I'm doing, and I'll poop them out as desired. Now I have to figure out my plans for the turn, and this is something I don't like about following the sequence of play explicitly in this design, or in Napoleon at Bay for that matter, which is I have to organize my forces before I assign any commands. Well, yeah, the hell with that. I am going to reorganize my forces as I look at them and think about what I'm trying to do. And whatever limited difference that allows me in terms of flexibility, screw that, man. You know, I don't think I'm cheating by doing so in any sense of the word. I think what I'm doing is trying to make the play actually work so that I'm not... Now, I see guys at Consim World not playing this, but playing games where they're very careful about every little step in the sequence of play. And that can be important at times, but if you're completely hard-ass about, like, trying to follow it, you're probably doubling the playing time, you know? It seems that way when I watch these games being played, when I see something like OCS or something. I'm like, you know, I understand you want a competitive game, but screw it, man. Fudge around with some of that shit. I don't know. World in Flames, too. Although World in Flames, man, some of the interactions are a problem if you don't. And now I have to figure out who this went to. And I think I'm hungry. What's interesting here is the sequence of play has the card baked into it, which is part of only the exclusive roles. But then it has stationary attrition listed as 47, which there is no stationary attrition that I know of in the exclusive. It's specifically revoked. And 47 has nothing to do with that. If we look over in the standard rules, I'm sure 47 is correct. What I think has happened was some modifications were made to the sequence of play, but they didn't catch this one. Because, okay, well, that didn't help. Paragraph 47 is indeed not a link into something, but the paragraph number of that line in the sequence of play. Ouch. Okay. So I got to decide which unit I want to move, which force I want to move. Not sure when the vedettes move. Did they move in the uncommanded movement or some other time? Let's see. I think they've got a... Okay, so it actually doesn't seem to tell when they move. But, so maybe you can kind of pretend. Of course, if you don't play a card, you're obviously moving a vedette. So the only way you can move them is by initiative without revealing what they are. And if you reveal, you know, in that case, you're rolling the dice for a lot of pieces. But your opponent can, of course, watch to see if is there anything you're triggering with a card. Or maybe your opponent should avert his eyes and let you do all your movement on your own until you've got some kind of situation that maybe he can react to. But I don't think there are any such. Because the reaction is baked in its own little sequence of play point. Okay. So I'm not going to be moving a vedette with this, but this card triggers my first move of the turn. It doesn't seem to allow the administrative movement. I have cards that allow that. I really should have all my cards assigned to all my pieces at this point, mentally in my head, to be able to play. Is there some card that I'm going to want to play for another? You know, man, I can't do it. You know, I just cannot do that. So it might be nice to get this bridge open, in which case, let's look at Becker and LaSalle. Ney is within range of his command. Do I really want to engage with Ney, though? And there is no recipient for this card. This card just gets discarded. Well, this card is my operational card, and I have to remember that. So I have my op-int card revealed, and that has to stay up while I'm operating. But then I also have to keep up any cards that have, you know, lasting effects or anything like that. And they may not be very lasting. They may just be for this movement and combat or this turn. But all those have to be tracked somehow, and there's no in-game mechanism to do it, other than, I guess, we could mark them with like some little piece of something, like a piece of paper or something. Yeah, I really want to get across here. Okay, well, I don't know. You know, I have things that allow me to move further, but Becker, if I can find him, he's only got 1 strength point of Cav. So he'd have 3 movement points. Moving through the forest would mean I could move 1 hex. Well, that doesn't sound terribly good. Is there any movement rate? Oh, the road under construction is a trail until some date, which should actually be on there, but it isn't. You have to look it up in the rules. And this is trail. Huh. Okay, and then Suti is also, I'm sure, just Cav. They're yellow. These guys are all yellow, so they're all Cav commanders. They're not going to be able to do the bridge repair work for me. Auguro could do it. Where's he? See, he's got a fairly decent sized force. I don't really know if I want him puttering around down there if I can get this bridge cleared. All right. So I was going to move Auguro. But it doesn't seem that important to use a card to move. You see what this all turns into. It's like, I don't really want to use a card for anything. And I'm even more desiring not to use a card because I have to look at the cards than I am to just not use a point. I'd rather just pile all my cards up. I don't know how many I have. It's a fair number, but this chart goes up. Oh, that's strength points. No, five or more cards is full up, it looks like. Is that for all of these? Yeah. So I got plenty of cards, but I kind of really don't want to do anything. So what I'd like to do is get Rap moving. Using administrative movement would be nice with him, because he's got a long way to go. So I'm going to, I guess, hold off on playing a card on him. What's here? I got Latour, but he's got good initiative. He doesn't want to go. Alright. Can Auguro and Lene be in the same hex? That's the next choice. And this is the kind of stuff I'm used to. But again, it's tough in the game. So I've only got 6 strength points under Lene. And I'm sure it's not 42 under Auguro. So now let's look at, can one command the other? So Auguro, and remember there's people who don't like each other. I don't think Auguro is in there, but maybe. So I'll have to look that up. So Auguro can command Lene, or Lan, sorry. And Lan, who only has 1 here, can take the 3 extra for Auguro. And in fact, he could take him if he's a 4. So yeah, I'm going to use my op-int card to move Auguro. And I'll move him 3 hexes. I'm going to flip him over, and I'll put him on Lan's card. And this is going to get confusing. Because I've got flipped over stuff all over the place for these guys. Like this guy, I don't know. That's one of his... I don't know. And this is Victor himself. So that's going to be confusing. But you know, there's no place to hold the counters. So anyway, he's flipped and he takes up, I think, 3, maybe 4, if I look up that roll, of Lan's command radius. But that's fine. Lon's not going anywhere. He's just flipped to indicate that I moved him. I'm going to use that same notation I used in 6 days of flipping the counters to and Napoleon at bay to note that I moved him, so I can walk away in the midst of a movement command phase. So that's one. I only moved 3 movement points, so well, no, that's all I'm allowed to. I only had 5 or less strength points, and with all my cards, that's not going to be a problem. I can actually go quite far without a problem. Now, if there's a plus on there, I take another hit if I do like a forced march or something, but I'm not going to do that. So now I'm going to look for something that'll allow me to do administrative movement with Rap. I'm pretty sure I have such a card. I just have to hunt it down in my deck. Through my cards, I found one that doesn't make sense. Corps Chief of Staff takes command. Recipient must be a Major General within 4 hexes of any Corps leader. Great. Increase the MG's initiative by 2 during the next march and forced march. Okay, well that works for the forced march when I think that's when the enemy's turn is going. But on your march phase, you've just committed this card with its march value to that unit. Initiative might be important for withdrawing from a zone. Well, you can't use the card if you're withdrawing from a zone of control, I believe, unless that's changed. Let's see if it's in here. So unfortunately, the cards are not. They're ordered kind of randomly. How's Zucker? Let's try to figure out how to represent data in the least accessible and usable fashion that we can. I don't see this card on there. I'm not going to look too hard. This is how, the scenario set up and everything is. It takes me a full day to set up what's really not a big game. A full day. Not WIF takes a couple of days for me to set up Europa Universalis. But, I can set up an OCS game in a day. This is ridiculous, that this takes a full day to set up. And it's mainly just puzzling over, what goes where? Okay, now I got a bunch of units that I don't know what they are, and they're not explained, I don't know. All right, well, we'll keep going. And yeah, if somebody came in and cleaned up his system, presentation-wise, it would be a lot easier for new players to absorb it, or for players who are used to one version of it coming to a new version, because at least in the old days, and it seems to be the same thing when we look at these exclusive rules that completely changed the game, each of the game designs had its own little weirdnesses to the rules that were all just baked in. I mean, Napoleon at Bay is very different from Struggle of Nations. They even have a different hex size, 1809 is closer to Struggle of Nations than it is to Napoleon at Bay, but again, it has that different hex size issue. So even though a lot seems to have stayed very much the same, it feels like every time he writes a rule book, he changes it. And in this case, somebody probably came to hey, come up with a standard rule book for the whole series and just put that in stone. And that's the stuff you don't change, and then ends up making a rule book twice as big so that he could change all the stuff in the original. Is no concept of a series, even if the system maintains a lot of the same facets. Okay, so for my wrapper, I'm going to play this card, which normally would give me 4 movement points for infantry, but instead, I'm going to use the event, and there's no number, I don't have to roll anything. Administrative March. One force may continue to move under this order each friendly movement phase. The force must move to the shortest possible route towards its objective, moving 6 or 8 movement points each turn. It may not force march. Okay, so my movement points, I guess, change. Let's look up this rule, 149. I wonder which rule book it's in. It's got to be this one because it's a card. They don't notate the difference between which rule book things are in, which is why this is weird. The sequence of play contains references into both that could be either rule book. Shortest possible route. it doesn't look to me like there's any restriction on where I can go. Like I can walk up to where the enemy is. It's not like Napoleon at Bay, which says, oh yeah, if you admin march, you got a problem. Now let's make sure. This is card 14. Quickly scanning here. Ho, 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 ho. Yeah, okay. And there's no counters for this, I don't believe. No, okay. So I figure out where I want to go. 6 to 8 hexes. Well, why don't we go out to Guernsey? That sounds like a good place to go. And now what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get a little piece of paper or something and write down who it is, where he's going, and attach it to that card for the length of the march. At the same time, if I'm going to Guernsey, I don't have to specify my whole path. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I assume Rapp has infantry with him, so he's not going to be able to go 8. Which is what I assume that 6 or 8 is. I'm not sure. Okay, so there's Rapp. Let's give him his troops. Oh, those are old guard. Wow, do I have an old guard corps? Because they could kind of go with that. I do not seem to. So Rapp is just my old guard, and I'm going to send him up towards Ney here. Okay, so that's 8 movement points. Now I look on here, 8 movement points gives me a 0 plus. Well, I'm not force marching or extended marching, I guess. I'm not sure. Nor am I sure that guard are immune to attrition like they used to be. See, this doesn't look like I'm doing an extended march, but maybe this is how they express it, is to give you numbers that are higher than these. Again, I really can't tell. For now, I'm just going to assume he can make it because, you know what, he is old guard, and normally they're immune to attrition, but again, the rules change in each game in a way that, like, these are supposedly core system rules, and I don't know how to hunt through here to find whether or not that's been changed. Okay, so you can see I put a paper clip and kind of pointed it to Rapp and put a note here, and between all those things I hope I remember what I'm doing. I think I'm done with my command movement. I feel like I have this natural inclination not to play movement commands, and although there are some that are kind of cool because they allow me to guarantee that I'm going to move a unit, but I get an extra card. I get a card to replace them. Those are useful, but why even expend them if they count as sort of half a card in my view, because once they're played, I'm probably replacing it with something that gives me a card. Now, if I'm looking for some kind of event or something, like especially if I'm looking for, the siege parallels or the artillery placements, I have some of them in my hand, and I'm nowhere near placing a siege. So I'll move down to the initiative movement. So, by my view, I have 6 to 9 movement points on this card. That gets me a 0 plus. If I'm doing an extended march, that would have cost me a point, but I don't know. Oh, no, that's not movement points. Sorry, I have 2 to 5 strength points. Yeah. Alright, now I can start doing initiative checks for the different leaders. Well, let's see if Ney gets to move. Basically, this is the same as in Napoleon at Bay. I roll a die. His initiative is 4. It's on the counter. It's one of those numbers. the first number over here, which I think corresponds with the tiny little first number there, for some reason the number of units he can command is on here, which actually you don't care about on the board. And you might or might not care much about his subordination on the counter, so that might be of some value. But the big number there is the initiative, and that's really all you need, which is why the counters are a little more cluttered than need be. Okay, I rolled a 6. There's special rules for Ney on a 6. Ney goes wild. Do we have a compass with numbering? No. So we'll just make one up that way and go clockwise. Okay, so Ney's going to head in direction 3 as far as he can move. He's using this, so that's two movement points. And his command is 5 strength points, which means he has no problem. So we moved him, and we'll be rolling for everybody and trying to move them all. I know there was a complaint about rolling for attrition for everyone. Honestly, it's the hard part is rolling for initiative for everyone. That's where all the die rolling comes in. In the old system, I found that I tended not to move in ways that really risked attrition very often. Sometimes there was a 1 in 6 chance. Sometimes I'm in a vital situation, and then, yeah, I do need to roll for attrition and see what happens. But in general, at least in Napoleon at Bay, the attrition table allowed you to get no chance of attrition fairly often when you moved. And certainly if you're not moving, unless you're out of range of your thing or have a humongous force stack together, you're not rolling for attrition. So that comment against it, against the older system, I think is kind of bogus. But having to roll for initiative for every single unit is tedious. So there is still going to be a lot of die rolling here. Well, I can decide what to do with Colbert. I don't have to make any rolls with him. What about Latour? Well, let's give him a roll, see where he goes. Okay, so I have him available. He's, let's flip him on the board. He's 1 strength point of cavalry. He can move 3 movement points. We'll move him. And we should throw this up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, I'm going to put this over here and this here instead, just to give myself a little bit more space. And remember, this turn I'm aware of where the coalition forces are. Next turn I will not know where they are. Anyway, I'll come back and complete this movement. One thing to realize. When I go, this is the first turn, and I'm showing you all my pain in the first turn. It also shows you somewhat how the mechanisms work. When I get to the later turns, and I actually know what I'm doing, and you could gain something by watching, part of the way that I gain that I'm doing what I'm doing correctly is I'm not talking on camera and breaking up my concentration so much. So the game does become easier for me by not giving you this. So if I was on camera, you probably would lose. It would still not be the perfect situation. But the perfect situation is when I'm on my own and I'm making up rolls on my own too, perhaps. But when I come on camera, I just tell you what happened during the turn. So we're gonna step away and go more towards the narrative than the system. But right now, I like to give the idea of the system and how much fucking pain it is for me to deal with the changes in it. So I spent a lot of time looking for, found, and then lost the rules on special leaders hating each other. This is, there we go, it's in leadership, think of these. And, so let's see what the list is. Murat, Bernadotte, Davout, and Massena, and Ney all have problems. Was Lon in there? Lon is not in there, which is good. Because I just rolled for initiative thinking I could define a force between Murat and Davout, and I can't because of that roll. Murat has 2 strength, has 2 points on his core command here, which means And I don't know if I can, because there aren't really rules governing this well, I don't know if I can, yeah, that's Lon. Yeah, there's nothing I can break this into, and it just seems to be Murat's personal boner, as long as I have 2 cav assigned to that. And if it goes away, it's gone and I can't use it, I guess. It doesn't seem to have any breakdown units unless the Lon Corps is one of them, which I don't think can be the case. So, and I'm not sure what it means. So, for example, Lon has 2 units in here and his core marker here. Again, I think these count as March Corps, so as long as that hasn't made it on the board, it can't be destroyed or something. I really don't know how to react to those suckers. They're not well described, but in this case, there doesn't seem to be anything I can convert that unit into. I would really like to make it be smaller since it's only holding 2 strength points, but those 2 strength points are each counting as an organizational point. So he can only command 5. Since Davout and Murat are both on that list, Davout would be 4 to put under me, so that would be 6. I can't give this to Davout. I think maybe I could give all of these to Murat if I could figure out a way to do so. But since they're in different hexes, I can't. If these combined into the Davout unit, I could not. Oh, I could do that though. Hold on. Nope, because then it would be 6 again, and Davout can only command 5, just like Murat. So there's no way that I can put one of these marshals under the other, which means I really can't afford to make the attack there. I've got some movement points. This is a secondary river, so I can't really move close to it. I'm going to hold off with Davout. I'll use my initiative roll for Murat, I guess, which allows me to push this way and try to get to that bridge. Or something. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not sure what to do with these cav either. They're not going to be able to force their way across. And so officially, even though I know by the rules that this is a vedette, and it won't, well, these are all cav. They can't build the bridge back, so yeah, I really don't know what to do with all these cav back here. I could give them to Lon, I guess. He's got a lot of counters on his thing. He's got 5 there. I hope, yeah, they're fine. So he's got a decent sized force. I want to move these cav, but I don't know what to do with them. But other things are kind of moving northward, trying to get to where they can do something in the game. A little difference. I'm planning on trying to repair some of my bridges. And so I've got a primary river bridge. It's damaged. I have to repair it. Oh no, that's to damage it. I need to repair it, which means I guess I can't spend any movement points, which is fine. I didn't. I had to look this up, and I'm tending to do this nowadays, but on player aids, when they don't bother to put the index into the rules that's useful, I can put it in. I was expecting there to be a die roll for this. There's not. I just automatically repair at the bridge, which is, I guess, kind of cool, but not the expected result. And they can't do anything. He didn't make it. Well, he's not able to. This isn't real. I thought I was repairing another bridge. I can't keep track of what my units are because they're all upside down. Yeah. Double blind means you don't know where your troops are either, and when you flip all your counters over, that kind of actually simulates that pretty well. You have no fucking clue what you're doing anymore. So yeah, that's where we are, I guess. And I repaired the only bridge that I could. I thought I was up at another one. So now we're going to go to the combat phase, and the allies, or coalition, get to play a card as an op-int type replacement, and then they can use that so that they can roll for forced marches. Now this is kind of weird, and I'm going to have to look this up because I don't know if the forced marches mean that the plus is in play for the attrition or something, because generally you couldn't even move very far on the forced marches in the other games of the system. And if you're doing them, if you did move very far, like more than a hex or two, more than moderate sized forces could go about 3 hexes in supply, or 3 movement points in supply. If you were going more than that, you were taking hefty attrition. And if you had a fairly large force, or you were moving 5 movement points or whatever, you basically were taking 1 level worse attrition than you would normally. And I don't think that's baked into these cards. I think, though, that probably the plus is applicable for that, which says, hey, you take an extra point of attrition if you're on that. That's not as significant as as Napoleon of Bay had, though. I don't know if the later games align better with that or with this, but whatever. We're looking at the coalition's forced march phase, and they have no compelling reason that they have to perform a forced march. They're not under attack where they need to get out of there or get reinforcements into play. But you generally would want to do a forced march in this system just to move your units a little bit faster each turn. However, here there's a real expense. In the normal game, hey, you don't have to pay attrition of any type for if you don't move during the forced march segment, and you can just roll for initiative and move whatever units that you can move without taking a penalty, and only worry about taking a penalty where it's really vital. But here I have to play a card if I want to do any movements. From what I can tell looking at the rules, that card's an option. I don't have to play it no matter what. But I also have to play a card if I want to do movements that's not going to cost me attrition, and that's only going to give me a little bit of movement or whatever. So, again, I'm going to have to analyze my cards. The effect's not going to take, or the event's not going to take effect. So I want to make sure I'm, not getting rid of an event that I want to play. This I have to keep out because it tells me, that the French can pick a pitched battle for this turn. Now, if I had given, and I did, didn't I? Yeah, so this guy's got a specific order. If he ended up in a fight, I have to keep that card aligned with him somehow. And again, that's fine because this one has to be aligned with him anyway. But every card you use in every operation has to remain aligned with the commander during the course of your turn if there's any chance of a battle happening. Well, a battle will only happen if you drive into it at that point. So that allows you to determine whether or not you can play a pitched battle. I believe the defender can always play a pitched battle if he wants to. He doesn't have to worry about the card he plays. But this will always apply as well. So the fact that I have a pitched battle here means that I'd be able to use a pitched battle for everyone. I think that the rules are less clear about. You can interpret it either way, which is to say that if you played with a card for the operation, there are ways you can read the rules where it looks like that card just trumps over this no matter what. But I'm kind of playing it with the, if I put a pitched battle here, I get a pitched battle anywhere I want it. It doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the mechanisms in the play, but man, there's too many difficult choices already in the card play. Anyway, like I said, I've got to analyze all the coalition cards. I'm going to have to do this again on their turn too. After they draw some additional cards. I think the overall problem that these cards just put too big a burden on the player, at least on this player, but I suspect on most. They've not been well received. You're talking about a much larger burden than the normal CDG. The normal CDG, you're thinking about the card very exclusively. You have very few of them generally, except maybe in games like the recent Wellington that I did, and I assume the Napoleonic Wars as well, where you have a whole big handful of cards at once, where, assessing the order to do them in is just painful. But beyond that, here, you've got a lot of other things to worry about. And the cards are kind of in this supplemental sort of minor role, but there's a lot that you have to worry about with the cards on top of, your maneuver strategy, etc., across the board. And I feel like they're just a lot of effort for what amounts to noise in the game. Again, though, I feel like a lot of the expansions that have gone to that original Napoleon and Bay system, not just in this, but in Struggle of Nations in 1809, probably in all of the games, probably in reprints of Napoleon at Bay, if OSG did them, say in the 80s and 90s, that all feels like noise to me as well. But at least I can see where it's coming from. Hey, we should have hidden units. Hey, some Cav scouting makes sense. Hey, the combat system isn't, really capturing the feel better. I like the choose-pitched battle versus... All that kind of makes sense. I can see where players demanded that who liked the system already and just kept pushing it further and further from the original very clean design. It's the same way SFB, just bloated from a really nice little light design to what only the diehards wanted, but it was the diehards who were buying everything, so it all came out. And it kind of made the whole game less attractive as an entry point anymore. That original set was something different, but is no longer available as far as I know, and now they came out with other games, Fed Commander or whatever. But that's what happened here too, where the people who really loved the game demanded more. People like me who thought, there's something really nice about Napoleon at Bay and something very clean about it. See each of the enhancements, if you want to call them enhancements, as, I don't know. It's not putting lipstick on a pig. It's taking a beautiful woman and covering up with makeup. It may be more attractive to some people. However, to me, it's spoiling the inherent beauty of the system by adding too much to it. Analyze all the cards. So here's what I decided. I decided to play this card. I don't think I'm going to be needing an invasion anytime soon. I'm far away from the Baltic, and it's not that time of year. And so that sounds good. It handles 6 to 9 with a 0 without a plus. The plus applies to the force marches. That's the primary use. I need the 6 to 9 because Bennigsen's got a large force, and now I get to make my initiative rolls and try to position my coalition forces. I'm not quite sure what they're going to be doing. I think usually terrain is important in this game. Giving up space is a big deal. So I'm going to try to move, I think, the back end units forward, see how far forward I can get them and whether they can support the front units, and then make decisions on the units towards the front, whether or not they are in a safe position, using my knowledge of the starting positions and strength points of the forces. That knowledge will degenerate as much as I can, and that should be pretty easy. Usually I'm stumbling into forces, even with everything visually available, I'm stumbling into things that are bigger than me using this system, just because the pieces are, secluded over on their own organizational chart. I can't paw through the stacks and stuff like that. And notably different from the 6 Days of Glory. That one, stacks of pieces are on the board, so you can see the size of the formation on the board. This, even with everything face up, has a lot more hidden information, to my brain at least, than did 6 Days of Glory, which had these little counters on top to try to hide, I don't know, the name of whoever's in the stack. I really don't know how well that worked as a hidden information tool. This works a lot better, especially with me walking away. I'm very likely not to know what my own forces are. A little bit of movement. Bülow goes under to stock. I had to make Bülow an unemployed leader in order for that to work. But by combining Lestock, not Deathstock, by combining Lestock's forces together, I was able to, I combined Bülow's unit, which is just a major general unit, so I can do that. And in fact, Bülow actually isn't here anymore. He's kicking around here the same way Kohler is. I can break either one off, but I want to combine his core, I guess, together. And some other things shift it around a little bit. The Ruskies coming down together for where the main battle looks like it's likely to be. That puts us now on the Coalition turn, and they go through the whole sequence again. Now, can I get rid of anything? I can get rid of this card. And I can get rid of this card. These don't matter. So now we do it all for the Coalition side. Now, obviously it's going to get easier. It always does. Especially as I start saying, you know, screw it with the cards. Let's just pick one. Which I might mainly come to. But speaking of which, we have to look up to see what we get for the Coalition. Now, the Coalition have two different armies. Unlike in the earlier versions where they each have their own separate point pool, it looks to me like in this version they just throw all their cards together and get to count them together for their admin pool. That seems a little weird. The exception to that is if you're playing a 3-player game of it, you keep separate hands, which again seems kind of weird. Why wouldn't you separate the hands anyway? I don't know. But the setup rules, I don't believe, give instructions to split the hands. Maybe I'm mistaken. Yeah, no, they just give that. And, you know, maybe there's some rule, just split it evenly or something. But so we see how many we draw. And in this case, Prussians, December, June. Where's the Prussian supply source? Way up here. Center of operations is down here. And now we got the big counting task. When the two start getting far apart, it gets kind of hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 9, 10, 11, 12. 13. Oh, I can't do that. It's got to be along primary roads, right? I better look. In all the other games, it's along primary roads, so I can't go tracing along the trail. But instead of giving the number in primary roads like they do in most of them, now they're giving it in movement points, which makes calculation... I don't know if it's any harder. You have to count by halves instead of by ones, but whatever. It's because so much of the rules is rewritten, I have to read both rule booklets to find out the answer to this. Because anything pertaining to the command set, man, I can't tell which rule book it's going to be in. I'll first look in the new rule book. If it's specified there, that's fine, but I suspect it's in the old one. But obviously it's already in the old one. The only question is, did it make it in the new one? And see the pain in the ass of, like, basically taking series rules and then rewriting them completely for just so you can put cards in a game. Design one series or another, you know, and then set up an optional differences between the two. Or say this isn't part of the series, this is its own game, and just use a lot of the series rules in your rule book. This is just silly. Okay, so in difference from prior sets, primary or secondary road, which means counting's more complicated. I got 17 movement points using just primary because I didn't bother to look up what I was looking for. Can I get that down to 15? I don't know, maybe. Six and a half, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This looks shorter. Yeah, we're going to be around that. Okay, so we're going to be in that 15 to 21 column. And we just roll and see this is the Prussian amount, and we give them their cards. 5, they get a card. Okay. And then we do the same for the Russians. They're closer. I think. Oh, where they? Oh, yeah, they're right on top of it. Awesome. So that's cheap. and they have their own chart. And they get 3 cards thrown into the pile. No national distinction, which, you know, if that's a matter because of the cards and wanting the events to be played for both players, of course, then why would you separate it out if you have 3 players? If it's just because the cards are a pain in the ass to deal with, well, I wish they had at least given me, you know, how to split things up otherwise. But also, it's not that easy because I play 1 card for all my attrition actions, right? And for, you know, for all my initiative actions. So I just don't feel like the cards were as fully fleshed out as they could have been as a rule set. They're not capturing something that the other set did, that the earlier versions did, that the 2X standard rules do, which is, hey, look, 1 army can be disrupted and thrown back, and it might have trouble and need time to reform and everything. So if you tried to use this system over in Napoleon at Bay, where, you know, there's restrictions due to the chart, etc., on the Silesian army, on the Bohemian army, wow, they just don't matter because it all gets thrown in one pool. Okay, so Schwarzburg's going to go running off doing stuff. Yeah, obviously, in that particular situation, maybe they would rethink if they used cards in it, but it just doesn't feel to me like it's capturing all of the elements that the original system did. So, you know, in addition to being a royal pain in the ass with the cards and not adding much, it's detracting from some of the simulation value that the game provided. Now, it does add some things, there's no question. How good those things are, whether those are reasonable things, this is this common CDG problem. Hey, you know, I have a card that allows me to forage. It's a special card. For some reason, my high command is able to order 1 unit to forage, you know? And yeah, maybe that's an across-the-board foraging. But, you know, these are very specific little specialty instances that they just feel like, yeah, they're kind of cool as random event type things, but I'm not so sure I like them in the player's hands, and I certainly don't like having to make the decision of which ones to use, but that's personal taste. But I gotta tell you, the bigger your hand of cards, the more obnoxious it is to try to choose what order and which ones you want to play and stuff like that, and what you need to hold for defensive reasons and all kind of crap like that. And that's fine when you're, you know, playing a game of bridge with 13 cards and you're trying to figure out, well, I better hold the Queen of Clubs because that's going to be important later. But, you know, on the other hand, when I'm playing a war game, I don't really want to be thinking about that kind of crap. What crapolas? I got to be careful. I see I gave Juan more strength points to his command than I can. So I'm going to take that away. I just tried to commit the same error with the Russians. Again, another little irritant and complication. It may be a sensible one in terms of the size of the units that anyone can command. But comparatively, in terms of the gameplay ease, a step down again from Napoleon at Bay, right? Napoleon at Bay, all the units are the same essentially, except, you know, a couple special things like the guards or the Cav infantry distinction. Here, every unit has its maximum strength on it. And then there's this magical I don't know regarding the individual named units. So for example, here Barclay starts with Markov on his chart. Now, Markov's a general. There seems to be a rule that those counters, I remember a rule, that those counters can't be on the board, that these counters can't exist unless they're major generals commanding them. Which obviously isn't the case according to the setup. So, you know, I'm going to allow them to be absorbed, but then I have to start making up rules about who can absorb them, you know? Does it make sense to let Sakin absorb Osterman? I don't know. I really don't. Shouldn't... And if it does, well, then I'm allowed a lot of shifting. So if the idea is like, I don't know what the idea could be if they're not supposed to have their commands on commanders there. But if I had the commanders here, Markov would eat up 2. Borozdin, if I can find him, up here, would eat up 2. That's 4 of my command points. Well, now I have another half, and then I have Bagravut who eats up 2. So obviously I can't have them like that. And worse than that, there's no Barclay de Tolly piece. Or if there is, it's not available at the start of the game. It's like a reinforcement coming in somewhere. And it could well be like upside down on another unit. Although I don't think that's the case, because that it would have to be with him. So there's nothing I can compound those into, and the rules as written just do not suffice to handle the situation. So I don't know, you know, I mean, can I just absorb Sakin into Osterman? The evidence of, you know, the example of what's set up at the beginning of the game seems to indicate yes. The rules seem to indicate no, but they disallow what Barclay's got too. So I just don't know. And I'm just not sure that tracking the individual strength maximums for the units and worrying so much about who's in command of which unit and everything is all that important if none of it holds together and you have to start fudging it anyway. It's already, you know, it's an irritant no matter what, and then if on top of that the rules don't support it, what the fuck? Talk about crazy stuff, and it almost feels like the card design was made without an understanding of the system. Maybe things are different than I understand. Maybe I'm the one who's clueless here. That wouldn't be shocking. But here, fall back. The recipient automatically passes its initiative during the friendly initiative segment, but must end its move closer to its segment of ops. Well, you don't make an initiative roll. I mean, you just don't, right? And this is the issue I had before. There was another card like this. You don't play an operations when you're in an enemy zone of control. Now, maybe that's changed. Maybe I missed that, and that's rewritten in the exclusive rules so you can issue commands when you're in an enemy zone of control. Or maybe you can only issue certain commands or something. But this is goofy, you know? This is not... You can't play this event as an operant. And then this is weird too. Evasion. I don't know if this is something separate or part of this. If it's part of it, then it makes sense, because you could play this with the intention that if you get chased, you can run away. And, you know, it does have that's got to be the case, the enduring effect there. The force may automatically force march out of an enemy zone of control, regardless of initiative. Which means you don't, it's similar to this passing the initiative check, but you can't play this as your operant. Which means the event doesn't, well, you can't use it as an event during your operant, which means if you have to make an initiative check, i.e. you're in an enemy zone of control, the effect won't take place, and the effect only affects those who are in an enemy zone of control. I'm going to have to look that up and see if the rules have changed on that, because that's a pretty major change if you can play cards for operations when you're in an enemy zone of control. On the other hand, it could just be that the cards were designed without an understanding of the system, you know, and that would not shock me. Okay, so remember when we looked at the sequence of play, we came to the conclusion that this looked like a cut and paste job. We can't trust what's in it. That may be the case. Step 2C is initiative movement. It doesn't exist in the command rules, in the campaign rules. Or at least it doesn't appear to. Okay? Maybe this is just changes in the command rules, in which case 2B, the movement command segment, has changed course, it has all kind of other random stuff in it, including things like 1A2, which doesn't really seem like it's in the right place. But if we look at the old movement rules, movement commands available to each side. Any force is guaranteed to move. To receive a movement command, a force must have a valid dispatch distance and may not be in an enemy zone of control. On the other hand, under the campaign rules, that's been withdrawn. Each force will have a card. Okay, each force which moves in this segment will have a card which applies only to that force, which specifies the movement allowance for that force and includes an event instruction. A force that does not move does not suffer attrition. Period. The end. During the movement command segment, the attrition for each force moved is determined on the attrition table at the bottom of its own movement card. No statement of initiative movement here. Later on, over in here, we do have initiative under 2C, which may still exist. However, there's no changes relating to that having anything to do with the op-int card, which under the op-int card it says it establishes the movement allowance for all initiative movement in that phase. However, there doesn't appear to be initiative movement anymore, does there? Damned if I know. I think the intention is you can do these in an enemy zone of control now. But, you know, like so much in this, hey, let's write 2 separate rule books and kind of hope that, you know, whoever's playing it can figure out how to cut and paste it together correctly. There's a couple of options here. Either the initiative movement is gone, in which case there's something clearly wrong, or it is exactly the same except for what's covered in another rule having to do with the op-int card, which is in the admin phase. And I'm not sure why you play it then, to tell you the truth. I can't think of a reason yet, except maybe they didn't want to reprint changes to the initiative in the initiative segment. Another game that was not successfully blind tested, right? Yeah. That's no shock coming from OSG though, and or from Zucker in general. I'm not sure. I mean, OSG. I'm trying to think. They did Panzerkrieg. That I don't remember having too many issues. That's the only example that I can remember not being fatally flawed in some way. Rommel in Tunisia is a fucking mess too. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I'm not gonna give it up. I'm just gonna keep trying to soldier on, making up rules as I go. But the game is not, you know, ready for market. If I got a playtest like a version like this, I would have tons of comments, right? Not that I do playtesting, because I'm too old for that. That was something I would have gladly done at, 20, but now, no. Took me a while to find this, but the rules on the named major generals. Each of these leaders must have their own combat unit on his track as long as both his leader and unit counters remain in play. Such a leader can be brought into play and removed only if it's a major general during the friendly command phase, but must enter the map in the hex with its combat unit. It sounds to me like I can dispose of major generals into other major generals as long as I can create a force, which might be difficult. So for example, Sakin here can command 4 points of stuff. Well, he's got a 1-point unit under him, which means he could command Osterman. And then, so they could stay in the same hex, and then he could absorb Osterman's troops and remove Osterman. That's my reading of it. It's not certain, though. I don't think that you have to have the major general on the map. the definition of in play is what's in the problem here. You know, again, a huge amount of ambiguity, but it's the only way I can reconcile the rules. So I decided to play a card. And seriously, it takes me like an hour to figure out my op-int or whatever it is. Just because I got to look at everything. And the reason it doesn't take me any time for anything else is I say I don't want to deal with cards for the most part. So I don't play any for anyone else. I have some interesting ones. But this one gives me a good deal. Well, it only gives me 2 to 3 movement. I was hoping for more, but those cards look too valuable to play. So this is what I did, and yeah, I'm not thrilled with it now that I look at the movement that I had. But the other ones that I wanted to use all looked like they'd be valuable for other stuff, so I'm not going to move as far as I want to. And then onward with this fun, huh? So, oh, this shit I don't really need. I can add replacement points. Well, damned if I can figure out where I can put them, you know? I mean, I can't just glance and say, oh, there's some space there and I could use that. I have to be aware of where the unit is on the map, how many strength points it has, what units it can take. The only unit I wanted to increase was Barclay de Tolly, and he's full up. So I think the answer is no, I don't give a shit and I don't want to. Of course, that was from the Russian side, but the Prussians have no replacement points, so I won't worry about them. Okay. Well, I looked up a rule and I played a card, and it's maybe time for another break. The next little phase that I actually play of this is pretty easy. It's the base game, with the exception that I, have to make a look up on here. Unless I decide I want to play a card for movement, which I don't know, maybe I do, but I hate doing that, so. Chances are I'm not going to do much with my coalition troops. I'm just going to roll my dice and move my mice. For the French force march, the coalition's moved. There's one unit I really want to move, Lannes. He's got a big force. He's got Augureau with him. Now I could split them up, and I may do that. But Augureau doesn't have a very good chance of moving. That's the problem. But we're seeing the Russians sort of consolidating down there, and I don't like what's happening. So I feel like I need to get more force there than Davout has, or else I'm going to have to fall back, and that's clearly not what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be conquering this territory. But the problem is, all my low movement point cards do something I like Forage. It gives me a card, but I can't play it as my op-int, and it has no recipient, so it can't be played for event, no matter what, during the forced march phase. Actually, that's what it is. Spoiling attack. Well, that sounds kind of cool too. I think I'll play this one though. It's a lower movement point card, and the reason I need a low movement point card, this one I can afford to play. The reason I need a low movement point card is because I'm in the 6 to 9 table, and I don't want a 0+, because this is a forced march, so I'd lose a strength point off of the one force that I really want to move. By putting this up, I'll get some chances to move my units around. I don't really have anything I terribly want to do. We got a redoubt starting to go here, so I probably want to get Ney a little closer. And he probably wants to be on the right side of the river. But the problem with Ney is, if I recall correctly, he has like 5 strength points, and Estoc has 4, and I may have brought some in there. But he's in affecting terrain. Does Ney have a little star? Ney does have a little star, so that's worth something. I don't remember what in this system. Like, I know what it's worth in Napoleon at Bay. I don't know what it's worth here. I want to say a column shift. But I don't trust that it's held up. The charts and stuff seem to change in ways that, for example, no longer worrying about primary road hexes, because now we worry about primary or secondary and movement points. In ways that maybe don't do that much good. So yeah, I don't know. We've got this. That doesn't do it. So odds determination tell me. Yeah, I don't know where to find it, so again, I'll have to spend some time digging through the rules to try to find where that modifier is. Maybe it's on the combat chart if I can find that. Well, that's the attrition table. It's got to be in here somewhere. And, is that? Leader bonus per point. It's a minus to the die roll. That's like 6 days rather than, you know. So yeah, I think I have to try him. So let's get him moving. Nope, he's not going anywhere. Definitely want to try to move whoever this Lahore is. He's Cav though, right? Shit, I don't know where he is. These charts are hard always. Latour. And he should be in the Cav pile. There he is. He's only got 1 strength point. Can I get him with Nay? Do I want to? I only have 3 movement points. 1. I forget about, because these primary roads don't look very impressive, I forget them. Yeah, let's get him in with Nay. I don't know what to do with those, but Nay can hold that. Ooh, Cav cost 1. That Cav does. Alright, and I'll continue with the rest, trying to get Lon moving primarily. The problem I have down here is I can't put everybody under the same command. So Lon can command Augureau, or he could command Davout, right? Or vice versa. So I mean, Lon, putting him under Davout doesn't really help me because he's got a 2-point unit. But as far as I think it's intended, I can't move like 3rd Corps units away from Davout unless I'm putting them under some some major general of the 3rd Corps. I can't just hand them off to other units. I don't think. I don't know. Otherwise, I'm not sure why the organizational stuff is there. So it's a lot less flexible in terms of handing troops around. That may be for good or bad. It keeps the Corps defined, which is kind of neat. But in particular, Lon's sitting here, not that he hurts, but he's sitting here with the Reserve Corps. Now, he could go under someone else at that 2 command, and he could take command of other units, but I can't dispatch Davout's forces. You know, if I could find if Davout has a counter. Yeah, I don't need all these. Right? So instead of 3, 6, 7, I put these here. I get rid of all these minors. And now, oh look, no cost. No. This is only 2, which means I could actually command, well, I could command Murat. So I actually have like 2 viable forces there. And it's not like the coalition's not going to have trouble putting together forces as well. Trying to get too many corps in one area just doesn't work without, some kind of awesome leader like Napoleon to take command of them. And if you look over on the Allied side, Bennigsen has it. Bennigsen's very well rated in this game. I don't know if he is in the series overall. I'm not really too familiar with him in the series games, but wow, yeah. A lot better than Blucher. Well, Blucher's a lower ranking general at this point. All right, so I think we've taken care of an entire turn. We don't have stationary attrition in this game. It's still in the sequence of play. And maybe it needs to be there because it may apply in the battle game. Yeah. See, that's the craziness here. If you're playing individual battles, which are like, I don't know, just how long are they? If you're playing an individual battle, obviously you're going to use a subset of the rules, but it's not just that. You use something that's more like these, which is to say you suffer attrition for not moving because you don't have cards in that. So yeah, this is 7th through 13th of February. You know, just a few days. Now, of course, we've only played, what? One day? No. So what was that, 7 through 13 of February? That works out to be 3 turns total. And, you know, we've played one turn. So, and I think we're done. And this is going to load up because it's been really, really long and really, really painful. And we'll start a new turn. And I'll go into a lot less detail. And that means you might hear less griping. Or maybe, you know, instead of 85% of the video being griping, it'll be 95%. And every now and then I'll stop in and say, yeah, and top of those gripes, look, things changed.